In this video, we'll show you how to weave in your ends and finish off your crochet work. We're using Sewed Our Stories, and you're going to want your tapestry needle and a little piece of thread. I'm going to be showing you how to weave your ends in both using two colours in a double crochet and in a granny square. To weave in your ends, you want to use your tails, and this is why we've also left a long tail, because we want to weave in around 8 centimetres to make sure that our crochet doesn't unravel. You want to take your end and we're going to thread it up into our tapestry needle. If you can't thread it straight away, that's where this little piece of thread comes in, and we use this like a needle threader. You want to take a loop of your thread, put it through the eye of your needle, take your yarn, put it through the loop, and then pull your thread to pull the yarn through. When sewing in our ends, we want to work into the back of your fabric so they're hidden. We want to make sure we sew in enough when we're weaving in, and also when working in multiple colours, it's best to disguise your end by sewing into the same colour as your yarn into the part of the fabric of your crochet. To sew in our yarn, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to weave through the stitch, going through the stitch, making sure I'm not coming out on the right side, but going through the middle of the stitches. And when sewing through double crochet, you can work through the middle of those stitches. I'm going to weave through one way, pull our yarn through. And my tip here is make sure that you pull your fabric, because when you're weaving in your ends, you don't want to pull too tight and ruche in your crochet. Now we've worked in one direction, I'm going to weave back along the way I came, crossing over, and this time I'm weaving under and over. And it's also helpful to break through some of your stitches, and this sort of creates a bit more of an invisible knot when weaving your ends. So I'm coming back through, and I always like to use my thumb to pinch my end to make sure when I'm pulling I don't accidentally pull too tight. I'm going to work through that last bit. And just to make it extra secure, if I've come out of this part of the stitch, I like to double back on myself a little bit and then weave over and under, come out at the end, pull lightly, and now enough of our yarn is secure, I can now snip this end, finishing off weaving in our ends. And that's weaving in our colour on our double crochet. I'm now also going to show you on the treble granny square. So I'm going to take my granny square, I'm going to thread up my needle the same, so I'm going to take my little bit of thread, come through the eye of the needle, place my yarn through the loop so I can easily pull it through. So now I've got my needle thread up, I'm going to turn my granny square over to the wrong side. And then the process is quite similar, but what you want to make sure that you don't suddenly make dense areas of your fabric, so work with your stitches. The granny square uses treble, so I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to work down the length of the treble, weaving under and over. And as this is a less dense stitch than the double crochet, I'm going to weave, twisting my needle, catching the stitch. So I've come down, remember again not to pull too tight. I'm now going to weave under the grouping at the bottom of that treble, and I'm going to weave back up, rotating my stitch, rotating my needle under and over the stitches to pull through. Remember again not to pull too tight, and then I'm going to work back down on myself, going over where I've come out, twisting our needle to make sure that we're weaving back and forth. And I'm going to do that through the next treble. And when we're not sewing our weaving our ends in one straight line, you want to make sure that you go up and down your trebles enough times to make sure that your yarn's secure. And then just going to go along the edge, looping my needle, weaving under and over the stitches, along the edge. I'm going to go back one final time the way I came to make sure that my ends are secure. Pull through. Remember not to pull too tight. And now we've sewn in enough to secure our end and it's safe to snip. And now you've finished off weaving in your ends. Practice until you're confident and then head to surdar.com for more stitches, beginner kits, patterns and yarn.